The next two ratios should be analyzed together because they look at inventory management, inventory days, which tells us how long it takes the company to sell their inventory. Two figures are needed: average inventory divided by cost of sales times 365, which converts the data into days. So let's look at the first one first, inventory days. Average inventories. The figure for inventories can be found in the balance sheet, SOFP, and you can see that we have these two figures for inventories. The figure given in the balance sheet for 2018 is a closing figure, and so as in 2017. But 2017 figure becomes opening for 2018. So we have, for 2018, we have both figures, opening and closing. Average inventory equals opening inventory plus closing inventory divided by 2. So to get average inventories, you could add these two figures for 2018 and you can find your average inventory, which can be used in the formula. However, in this case, I am not going to do that. And the reason is that the difference between opening and closing inventory is negligible. It's around 25 million, which seems like a lot of amount, but if you take the percentage of the total inventory, it's around 3%. And this will be the case for all of the established businesses. Tesco, Sainsbury, all the established business, they tend to keep a very stable level of inventories. So average inventory will not be needed most of the time. Closing inventory is as good as average inventory. However, there will be instances where some companies, especially those which are growing faster, we talked about Tesla last week. If a company like Tesla is growing too fast, their inventories will increase faster, will change significantly, opening and closing inventories. And if that is the case, then you should take the average by the formula which I just told you. Another reason you could have a significant difference between opening and closing is pandemic, COVID-19. The data in the COVID or pre-COVID would be different than the COVID data in COVID or after COVID. So the chances are you may have to take the average inventories. But the thing is, if a certain data crunching exercise, certain equation, certain formula does not add value to the analysis, we don't do it. Although the formula is telling us, but if it's not going to add value to the analysis, we will not do it. And this shows that you are able to think outside of the box. You are not doing what the formula is telling you to do. You are using your own mind as well and thinking, is this even helpful? So in this case, you don't need to do average, but keep an eye. I leave it to you, and it will be a good assessment to see how you apply this discussion in your analysis. Did you do average inventories or you didn't do average inventories? The threshold should be around 5%. If the difference is more than 5%, then maybe. Because 3% in this case, if I do the average, it will become 1.5%, even less than that. So not really needed to do average inventories. So I'll take the figures from my 7.5 as my inventory days. And the same applies to the gross profit ratio. You may have already calculated ratios for your companies, and if your companies were service-based companies, they don't do gross profit, they don't have gross profit. Gross profit is generated when you buy and sell things. So let's say you bought something for £50 and you sold it for £80, your gross profit is £30. But if you don't buy and sell, for example, university, they don't buy and sell things to you, or airliners, they don't sell anything unless they're small food we discussed last time, or phone service providers, they don't, or any other service providers, they don't buy and sell, they will not have gross profit. If they don't, you don't calculate gross profit ratio, and you should explain the reason for that. Even if they would have a tiny bit of GP because they sell a little bit maybe food on the flight and stuff like that, you should not take that into account because it's insignificant to analysis. It's not going to add any value to your analysis. Cost of sales, folks. Cost of sales should be in income statement, but we looked at it last week and we know that it's not there. So we will go to note 3. Note 2 and note 3, and you can see that cost of sales figure is there. So we'll use this figure. So we need to use days as well, 365 days. $43 days and 42.36978. So actually even this one is 42.86 days. So this would be rounded up to 43, right? What about this bit? 42.36. If you use Excel, it will round it down to 42 days. However, because it's a day, after 12 o'clock at night time is the next day. It's not today 0.1 day or today 0.2 day. It is tomorrow. So days are always rounded up, 43 days. So we can say that performance in this area is consistent. They managed to sell their inventory in 43 days, both in 2017 and 2018. Is it good enough? Is it quick enough? To understand that, we need to understand the business. There are two major areas of Marks and Spencer's operations: food sales and clothing. Food, fresh food and veg and meat, for example, should be sold within 7 days. Otherwise, it's too late. From that perspective, it's a lot more than that. However, the other significant area for their business is clothing. And if you think about the clothes manufacturers and sellers, they have a long supply chain. They buy wool and cotton when it is harvested. And they buy for the whole year in one go, because it's not something you can buy every month. When the time comes, you need to buy. So all of their inventory they buy and it stays in their warehouses. So that adds value to the inventory. If the value goes up, inventory days would go up. Then this is processed into raw sheets of clothes, and then those sheets go to the stitching. That's done, that takes time. Then it's shipped to the UK and everywhere else in the world, and then it stays on the shelf, and then it is sold. It takes a long time. So from that point of view, it's pretty good. So on average, it seems okay. But if you look at the competitors' data, Tesco is selling their products, their inventory days are around 30 days. So if you compare, Tesco sells very little clothing. So if you compare it, then it seems reasonable. But you should be comparing it with Next, Superdry, John Lewis, for example, to understand a bit more about what other competitors are doing in this area and to make a proper judgment. The next ratio tells us pretty much the same information in different ways. Inventory turnover. You can see that it uses the same figures, only in inverse way. So inventory turnover, which is cost of sales divided by inventory. And $8.5 and 8.6 times. So M&S managed to sell their inventory 8.6 and 8.5 times a year. the higher the figure is, the better it is. And to understand this, let's take an example of two businesses, A and B. Both started with £10,000. They buy products for 10,000 and they can sell those products for £15,000. So they make a profit of £5,000 every time they buy and sell, 50% margin. Business A can sell their products 12 times a year and business B can sell it 6 times a year. The gross profit for business A is 60,000 and for business B is 30,000. With the same amount of money, same gross margin, but because they can do it more, they can sell it more times, they're more profitable. This difference in inventory turnover could be because of the types of products they sell. For example, a fresh fruit and veg guy would be able to sell their inventory a lot more quicker than, let's say, somebody who sells crockery or kitchen utensils or stuff like that.